So I recently wrote an article on AI that started out by calling it a parasitic egregore. And I want to go a little bit deeper into that part of it and mm, further elaborate on the case for this this thing that we're calling AI being a parasite. And now that's one of the longest articles I've ever written. So I don't blame anybody who hasn't gotten through all of it. And I certainly don't blame anybody who doesn't click through all the links. There's hours worth of videos and articles there. And the reason I went so link happy with it is for the people who, might not be so gung ho about the direction that technology is going in and might even be terrified by it. I wanted to bring some hope in that article while still being realistic about the situation that we find ourselves in. Now, with AI, I hate calling it that because it's the furthest thing from intelligent. This is 100% marketing hype. It's never going to magically become what it's promised to be. And I'm not saying that LLMs aren't useful technology. I'm not saying that they can't do amazing things. And I'm not saying that completely mind-blowing and even horrifying things aren't going to happen in the next 20 years regarding technology. But AI is not the thing that's going to bring it about. At least, again, what they're currently calling AI. I don't make a point of using different language because I know that that's going to confuse the ever-loving hell out of anybody who finds this video. So even though it might be clever, it might be cute, I gotta use the language that everybody else is if I want them to understand me. So making this case, it doesn't require studies. It doesn't require deferring to external authorities. It just requires some basic observations, working off the notion that as above, so below, meaning that when it comes to the spiritual dimension of what this is, you can discern a lot about it by looking at how it manifests and how it impacts people here in the material world. And also, you can rightly assume that something is what it does. So what does it do? What is being done through it and what's being done on its behalf? Just earlier today, I heard news that in my state, they had approved 2 more rate hikes for electricity next year. And that royally pisses me off because we're already paying 3 to 4 times more than we were. And a very large part of that cost is coming from the data centers that have already been established. Because these tech companies, they are not covering the full cost of their data centers. In a lot of these cases, they're covering half the cost of their data centers. And then the state, i.e. the taxpayer, is on the hook for the other half. So even if you never use this stuff, you are paying out the ass to support the expansion of a chatbot. The more I've learned about all of this, the more infuriated it's made me. People like Sam Altman should have a cactus stuffed so far up their ass, it's getting into their lungs. So right there, you have financial parasitism. I know a lot of elderly people on fixed incomes, and I have no idea what they're going to do when the rate hikes take the current absurd prices for electricity into 5 and 6 times the range that we were paying a couple of years ago. They're using natural gas, like they're using up fresh water. They're using up resources that the animals need. And on top of that, in terms of people interacting with AI, it's a psychosis machine. And I don't think that this can be blamed entirely on the people being ungrounded or lacking self-awareness. The way that AI strings things together, it functions like our consciousness does to an extent, but the way that it mimics our consciousness, it's like someone in psychosis, how they free associate. Because it's just guessing the outputs. It has no understanding of things. So it guesses what is most likely to come after the previous word in answer to the query. And it functions a lot like psychological contagions. Research that if you've never heard of something like that, where someone who isn't mentally ill spends a lot of time around people who are mentally ill and they start taking on the symptoms of that person who's mentally ill. A very famous case of this had to do with some kids who were in a very strict and stressful environment. And there wasn't anything physically wrong with them. But one of the kids started going into laughing fits. And nobody understood why, nobody understood what was going on. And it spread across the school. And like they would be laughing and laughing until pure exhaustion, just as part of their stress response. That appears to be what's going on with AI with a lot of people. Because there's no proper safeguards, because it's so sycophantic, because it is designed in a way to keep people engaged. Not to inform them, not to help them find valuable information, but to keep them engaged. It's doing it at the cost of potentially breaking people's minds. And I don't think that anyone, no matter how strong their mind is, if they are seriously interacting with this on any sort of regular basis, that their mental well-being is going to hold. It's exactly why, for me, I have a lot of sympathy toward people who struggle with mental illness. And I spend time with them, I offer compassion with them where I can, but I still limit my time with them because I know that if I get too close, if I stay in their energy too much, there's a decent chance that I'm going to end up in a death spiral. And any intention that I have to help them is going to be completely wasted as I end up in a position where I myself need help. This is something where a year ago, I was still somewhat open-minded to what OpenAI was putting out and what Anthropic was putting out, all these different models. I was open-minded to the idea I could be wrong about this just being a trend. I could be wrong about this not being a world-changing technology, but just a fresh coat of paint and a lot of hype thrown at something that really isn't that exciting. Because, yeah, people are saying that this technology is going to change the world. It already has. There's nothing new about it. It, of course, is going to continue advancing. Of course, is going to keep expanding. But every single thing that's being called AI right now, okay, if ChatGPT is AI, there's a good case to be made that the spam filter on my email account is also AI. It doesn't make any sense. And now you couple this with the thought forms and egregores that result from people pouring all of this energy into it. And then spirits who may want to attach themselves to it. Like I've received visions of spirits putting the AI on like it's a mask and speaking through it. I think that happens. I think that happens on a fairly regular basis. And because it's something that you don't own and you don't control the code, you don't control the machine that it runs on, you can't do anything to prevent something malicious from coming through. And that thing that's malicious, in all likelihood, it's not going to come bringing terror. It's not going to try and outright destroy you. What it's going to do is it's going to make you feel good. It's going to give you what you want, so you get lulled into this peaceful and pliant state. If you struggled with trying to make the case for what I'm saying here, I'm hoping that this will help. Because I think that this is something that a lot of us have seen, but we've struggled with putting words to it because it's difficult to find language for it. And I also know for me, I don't want everybody who uses AI to think that I hate them, because I don't. I am a little bit baffled as to how people got taken in by it, but I'm understanding it better the more that I realize, hey, most of the things that people are saying AI has helped them with, it just shows how they didn't understand what the technology we already had for years could do. And that's not their fault. There's been very poor technology education, especially over the past decade. It's it infuriates me that there are people who have recently graduated high school who are less computer literate than I was when I came out of high school. Back when I started using computers, you had to learn their inner workings to some degree to use them at all. Because as good as things were at that time, more often than not, you'd plug something in and it would give you error messages or it wouldn't be recognized and you'd have to search the internet. You'd have to find a solution. And having developed that skill set, I think I take it for granted just how much of a benefit that was to me. Because that skill set is still incredibly valuable. Even as bad as search engines have gotten, that process that I go through to find what I need for different articles or to solve different problems, it is infinitely better than anything that a chatbot can do. And these LLMs, if they were structured like a supercharged search engine, because there's a real need for something that is more user friendly in terms of producing the kind of results that a search engine can when you know the inner workings. There's a lot of things that aren't spelled out for you on the front page of Google or on the front page of any search engine you go to, that if you know them, it makes a world of difference. Like the fact that you can put a set of words in quotation marks to search for that exact phrase. Or you can put .pdf at the end of your search if you're looking for a book or a document. And quite often you will either find it or you'll find leads that will eventually lead you to it. But instead of creating that, they created something that pretends to be your friend. In a day and age where people are largely cut off from their families because of childhood trauma, in a day and age where more and more people are lonely and isolated and glued to screens, and it's absolutely destroying people. There's no defending that. And the words that I have for it, I can't say them. I can't say them because if I said exactly what I think about people like Sam Altman, my entire internet presence would disappear. There's no fate that I think is harsh enough for them. When you look at the sum total of all of the damage that they've caused, to build up all this hype, to pour all these resources into something that is never going to become what they're promising. They're asking people to spend money they don't have to pay exorbitant electric bills for the promise of a product that's never going to materialize, or at least it's safe to assume it won't. It would be like if somebody came to me and asked for a loan on the basis of what they can earn. I'm not going to give them the money so that my family goes hungry on the promise of what they could do. No matter how convincing the hype is, that would be insane. But that's exactly what the AI companies are asking of the general population. And back when I just treated this as something of I can use it or I can choose not to use it, I didn't care so much. But more and more, the feeling has been you will be assimilated and you will like it or you will be left behind, which feels way too much like the Abrahamic program to me, especially when you read between the lines of the future visions that these visionaries have described. Assuming it did replace the majority of human labor, so the majority of us are dependent on UBI at that point. That doesn't sound like a good future to me. That sounds like a future where they most likely wouldn't allow that many people outside of the ones who run these machines to continue existing. Because what purpose would they have for most of us? And if all the resources that you have access to, like, I don't care if oh, everybody has free computers. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? How is that going to raise me up in life? The most likely outcome of that would be that people would put on VR helmets and just lose themselves in endless dopamine loops for whatever period of time they spend on this earth. And that would be a very miserable existence, very much like the celestial North Korea that is described by the Christian faith in terms of their heaven and their salvation. And then, of course, the doomers, they're basically describing a technological version of hell. It's the same program playing out its loops within a different paradigm. It's just technology over religion this time. From what I've heard, companies like OpenAI have become a kind of religion. There's a very cultish mentality among many of its workers. I'd say that's another point of evidence for how this is a parasite. Because wherever you have parasites at work within the astral, you tend to have messianic fervor, you tend to have apocalyptic predictions and visions, and you also tend to have a lot of true believers. And these true believers many times were people that you probably loved or would have loved if you had met them before they were brainwashed, but after that point they lose themselves and become a hive mind. So I'm not anti-technology in the slightest. I'm not against the usage of LLMs. Even as I said in that article, I can actually see several applications for an LLM, for a protocol like ChatGPT, that I could host locally on my own machine. And I could control where my inputs went. And I could control when it updated and what data it was drawing from. But that's not what they're offering right now. And I can't in good conscience encourage anyone to try and utilize these protocols, especially the vulnerable. If people have shown no sign of psychosis, have done insane things after spending hours interacting with ChatGPT, I could not in good conscience tell my clients, who in many cases are healing from deep traumas, and who, if they're stable in one way, they're not stable in another. I couldn't tell them to go to ChatGPT to help them with their problems, because I have no idea what would come of that. And I think that the best case scenario is that they would get a lot of dopamine, they would get a lot of good feelings, but they wouldn't actually progress. They wouldn't alchemize what they need to, and they wouldn't feel what they need to feel. For anybody who has managed to legitimately benefit from it, great. That's not a problem. I would just implore you, please don't keep using it past that point. Or if you do, be very mindful of the risks. Because there's always some entity out there. There's always some piece of technology that is willing to promise you miracles, that is willing to promise that it will solve all of your problems. And it will do it up to a point. But then it pulls the rug out from under you. And when that happens, you might not even notice, depending on the state of mind that you're in. And if you do notice, it might not be easy to get yourself in a better position after that point. And it's not to fearmonger, because you shouldn't be going into these things afraid. And especially if you ever have to deal with something like ChatGPT, like say at work, some of us don't really have a choice in terms of whether or not we interact with these protocols. You shouldn't be afraid when you do it, because that's only going to feed the sorts of things that I am trying to steer people away from and that I'm trying to draw attention to. The solution is to stay grounded in yourself, to stay grounded in your humanity, and to never stop thinking for yourself, to never stop researching. If you use the chatbot for research, please go out and verify the information yourself. If you use it for different functions, please develop the skill set that you need to be able to do those things without using the chatbot, because it is your self-agency and your self-trust and your self-agency expressed through building skills, through building knowledge, through building competency. That builds self-trust. And the more you build competency, the more you build self-trust, the more you connect with yourself, the more you connect with your body, the stronger your intuition becomes, and the harder it is for anything external to be able to pierce your energetic field, siphon you, and manipulate you. Now, in the description for this video, I'm going to link to the article that I wrote. I'm probably going to addend this video to that article. And I'm also going to link to a video by a wonderful psychic named Raya that I think is perfectly aligned with the message that I'm putting out there. And if you like what I do, I think that you will really like what she does.